Hey, campfire crew, let's get it on.
The Creepy White Van by SX Me. So this happened in I would say 2017. I was around 13 and I was walking home from school. My mom worked late and my father was out for a business trip, and my brother's college was farther away, so he always came home half an hour to an hour after me. When I had to go home myself, I would always take a shortcut. It was an enclosed path with rarely any people. But there was a man a few steps behind me this time, and since I was a young dumb child, I thought nothing of it. When the enclosed path ended and connected to the sidewalk, I saw the guy who was behind me getting into a white van. Now getting slightly suspicious, I started running to my house and noticing that this white van was following me. To be sure that it was following me and that I wasn't just paranoid, I took a couple of wrong turns, but the van just kept on staying behind me. So I took a detour, and when I lost this guy, I ran back to my house and locked all my doors and windows. I looked outside, and I saw the white van. I frantically called my mother and my brother. My mom wouldn't be home for another few hours, and my brother had half an hour left. My mom told me to go to my parents' room and get a gun. I did go into my parents' room and went to their closet and got a gun, but mind you, the closest thing I ever did to shooting was archery. So I went downstairs with a gun and grabbed a knife. I went to the window and saw somebody trying to peek into the house. I pointed the gun at them and threatened them, and they just left and ran away. My brother finally came home and I told him what had happened, and we looked at the security camera. And sure enough, we saw this guy trying to get into our house through the back door and give up, and that's when he came to the window to peek in. After my mom came home, we called the cops, and they tried to trace his license plate number. But I would see that same white van pass by my house every day until the police finally caught him. Turns out he was an escaped convict high on something. So, white van guy? Let's not meet again. The Slaughterhouse by Rizzico29. At high school, I made friends with some guys from a nearby town, and I often traveled there to spend time with them. One night, one of them said to me, "Hey, there's an abandoned meat plant in a secluded part of town. We should go over there." Some of the other dudes had been there before. I was a 16-year-old who loved adrenaline, so I thought, it's a great idea. And after some hesitation, everyone else agreed too. One guy led us all there, but I found the path really odd. I mean, when the place was active, they probably transported the products and or animals with trucks, but it would have been very difficult for a truck to pass by there. Anyway, we walked down a long, narrow dirt road surrounded by fields and forests with absolutely no lights or buildings anywhere. This place is in the middle of nowhere, but after a 10 or 15 minute walk, we finally arrived, hopped over the fence, and saw what was inside. We wandered around the place exploring, which was fun because the previous owners had left everything behind, machines, workwear, etc. To be honest, nothing paranormal happened there, but we found two things strange. One, the place had been abandoned for more than 10 years at that time. However, we found a big barrel at the yard filled with guts and insides. It didn't seem super fresh, but it was still strange. And two, every door was unlocked except one. That door looked brand new, while all the others were old and battered. That room also didn't have any windows, so we never got in. And plus one, that was a later discovery. Someone regularly went to that place. A couple of the other kids always broke the padlock on the gate and when they went inside, but days later another padlock always appeared. Anyway, it was fun, so it had become a habit to go there once in a while, and the last time we were there was in February of 2017. 2 weeks after our last visit, we heard that some kind of crime happened at the meat plant and the police were searching for somebody. I never got any further details on what actually happened. But there is a small news portal that deals with what is happening in this area, but they didn't even publish the incident, so we tried to find it on other sites. When I mean we tried, we really did. There is absolutely no information about this place on the internet, as if it never existed. Urban legend says that a Russian millionaire bought the place when it was closed. I don't think I'll ever go there again. The Last Tram by Typical Television 9. This happened a few years ago when I was a dumb teen girl who loved walking the city alone after dark. This took place in Eastern Europe for context, in a city with a tramway system. On this one night, I was sitting in a station waiting to catch the last tram home. 3 trams stopped at this station, 2 of which went where I was going, which is important info for later. It was around 10 p.m., and as I sat there waiting, lost in thought, I barely registered a man quietly walking up and standing by the shelter. I thought nothing of it, just someone else waiting for the tram. Until I started feeling weird. The streets were quiet and dark, and there was no one else in sight, just me and this guy. And I started wondering why he chose to stand this close to me when he had so much space to avoid dealing with people. I couldn't comprehend anyone waiting to socialize this late at night, given that I was not very social myself. So I glanced at him, trying not to overthink it. He was a bald-headed, beady-eyed giant, tall and built like a bear. Big belly and big arms and legs. I was 5'2" and scrawny, but that wasn't what was scaring me. It was the fact that he was staring right at me, unblinking and expressionless. Not even attempting to look away or act embarrassed. No, this guy wanted me to feel uncomfortable. I instantly felt weak and shaky, cold shivers running down my spine. This was not normal. I realized quickly that I was not in a good situation. I couldn't miss the last tram, and walking home was out of the question, and my phone was almost dead. I was a shy kid and didn't have what it takes to scare this guy away. I knew that. But I had to at least try. I only managed to utter a small, "Hi?" trying my best to startle him out of whatever he was thinking. But my attempt failed in the face of his silent, threatening aura. He kept staring, no sign of intent to reply. He was enjoying this. Feeling panic rising inside me, I told myself to stay calm and think rationally. Maybe he didn't hear me? Minutes passed, and his stare continued to burn on my skin. There was no tram in sight. Ignoring him didn't work. So I mustered the courage to speak once again, this time louder. "What do you want? Stop staring." No answer. He definitely heard me this time. I felt myself start to get angry. I didn't want to let this guy get to me anymore. I didn't want to continue to give him the satisfaction of watching me squirm nervously and pretend that his behavior didn't bother me. I took a deep breath and forced myself to start thinking. I knew what I couldn't do. I couldn't fight him off if he made a move. There was nothing I could say or do that would get him to stop. I didn't know what his intentions were, but I knew they weren't good. If I tried to walk away, he probably would follow. I could run, but he would most likely catch up to me before I could tire him out, since his legs were much longer than mine. Even if I managed to somehow lose him, walking home through the dark alleys past the junkies and gypsies that were always prowling about could land me in an even worse situation. I could pretend to call someone, but he might feel compelled to act much sooner if he felt threatened. So what could I do? The only thing I could realistically be able to do was to try and outsmart him somehow. So I started developing a few plans, depending on which trams showed up, trying to confirm whether he was just amusing himself and actually waiting for a tram too, or popped over for other more suspicious reasons, and whether I could get any kind of help. I couldn't let him see where I lived, so if he followed me, I'd have to be prepared to employ whatever strategy available. For that, I needed to stay rational and aware of my surroundings. While I was still thinking, the first tram showed up. It was one I could have taken home, but this one pulled into the depot right in my neighborhood, forcing me to lead this guy to my home if he followed me. I hoped he would board it and leave me alone, but he didn't. He kept watching me carefully. I let the tram go, desperately hoping it wasn't the last one to head home. He continued to just watch, and I sensed that he was quite happy with how things were going. I put up with it for another 15 minutes, trying to focus on another plan of action. I could now pretend that I needed the other tram, the one going to a different area of the city, and just ride to the next station, getting off as soon as possible so I didn't end up too far and miss the tram I needed. This tram showed up next. With my heart in my throat, I boarded it and sat down by the door. He got on too, but sat by himself in the back, pretty far from where I was. I let out a sigh of relief, thinking this might still go well. When the tram reached the next station, I got up and out, not looking back and hoping it was all over. But when I stepped on the pavement and watched the tram drive away, I didn't see him in it. I turned my head slowly and was terrified to see him walking towards me, looking slightly pissed off. He stopped just a few steps away and then resumed staring, this time with a clear hint of malice, but still in silence. My vision blurred as I fought back tears of despair. He was not going to let me go. The helplessness I felt was unbearable, but I couldn't cry. I couldn't give up. I had to find a way. I had to get home tonight. The prospect of what might happen to me at any time now if I didn't was becoming way too real. My head was full of unanswered questions, regrets, and horrible scenarios. I wanted so badly to not have to think anymore, to not have to fight back the tears and stay composed. But I knew this would be his cue to enact whatever fucked up plan he had in mind. I couldn't let that happen. Then I saw the final tram approach, the only one I could take now, and got on as quickly as my trembling legs would allow me to. When I was in, bright lights enveloping me, my mind snapped out of its nightmarish spiral of fear and allowed me a moment of clarity. I had 3 stops to figure this out. I sat down at the front and looked at the driver. He was a frail old man, blissfully unaware of my distress. Getting the driver's attention was a no-go. We passed one stop. There was no one else waiting to climb aboard. I turned around fully expecting to see that the psycho had followed me again, but I did not expect him to be sitting right behind me. He wasn't taking any chances. He was making sure I wouldn't try anything like last time. I shot him a hateful glare and allowed my anger to overcome my fear. I stood up and purposefully walked over to another seat in the middle of the tram car. I wanted to make it clear I would not put up with his BS any longer. He got up too and slowly walked up to a spot 2 seats behind and diagonally from me. Then he sat down with the tiniest arrogant grin on his face. Already expecting it, I shot up and stood by the middle door instead, determined to keep him on his toes. If I stood right by the door, he wouldn't have any idea which station I planned to get off at. He remained where he was this time, convinced that I was bluffing. After all, this really was the last tram. There was nothing else I could possibly do to escape now. He must have reckoned that, so my defense was just a funny act to him. This was my chance. I had to take the risk, and it had to work. There were 3 doors on the tram, and they all opened and closed at the same time, and stayed open for around 5 seconds before closing again if no buttons were pressed or people detected on the threshold. The next stop, the only one left before mine, came into view. The tram slowed to a stop. The doors open. I made no move. 5 long seconds passed, and the doors started to close. I bolted out and ran for it, reaching the back door as fast as I could and slammed the button to open it again. My whole body tensed with adrenaline. I was waiting a long, painful second and then jumped back in, keeping my head low, holding my breath, and crouching behind the nearest seat. I shut my eyes tightly and exhaled slowly while thanking the gods I didn't believe in for that button working and wishing with all my might for him to not have seen me before I got back on. As I was waiting to hear his footsteps approaching, I pictured him frantically looking for me. Was he still on the tram, face screwed up in anger, head turning like a fat, ugly meerkat? Or was he catching his breath on the pavement of the last station, mad eyes searching the darkness for me? As the tram continued its loud journey, banging and clanging in sync with my heartbeat, I dared smile to myself, imagining his face when he realized he fucked up. Hand on my chest, I did my best to stealthily look around the corner and found no one looking back. I stood up in excitement and threw myself at the foggy back window. And there he was, standing alone and victimless on that slowly fading out of sight station, watching me leave him and his vile plans behind. I made it home and told no one my story for fear I'd be admonished for my naivete, but I was safe. I was proud of myself, and I learned my lesson. Creepy stranger, I hope the events of that day taught you to not underestimate girls, and maybe prevent you from becoming a criminal for the rest of your life. Giving someone the middle finger never felt so good. Haunted Rest Stop, submitted by Jackson. This took place at the beginning of November of 2022. I was returning from a birthday visit with my son, and on the road we stopped at a rest stop, and no, I don't remember which one, I wish I did, but I do know it was on 74 North, before Effingham in Illinois. After I pulled in, my wife waited in the car while I went inside, as I needed to use the facilities. Entering the building, there was one woman who was purchasing something to drink from one of the vending machines, and then I saw her leaving as I headed into the men's room. After I was done, I went back out into the lobby area where I realized I was completely alone in the building, which is a little strange for a rest stop. I moved over to the vending machine to get a bottle of water, and as I stood at the machine, the stupid thing wouldn't take my dollar bills at first, and I could tell someone had come up behind me while I continued to try to shove that bill back into the machine. You know, that feeling when someone is waiting for you to get your ass out of their way so they can use the machine? Well, I felt that. Without turning around, I apologized and finally got my money in, which was a relief as I could feel this person behind me was getting impatient and angry because I was taking so long. I heard the bottle of water drop, and I quickly grabbed it from the machine and turned around to apologize again for taking so long, hoping as I did so that they would understand and not want to hurt me. The only problem was that when I turned around, there was no one there. I was still alone in the building. I just stood there dumbfounded. I mean, what had just happened? I know there was someone or something right behind me. I thought I had even seen some type of reflection in the machine when I was getting my water, though as I look back, I'm not sure about that. But I thought I did. I do know that I could feel their agitation at me. And then there was nothing. I returned to the car, still seeing no one else around, and this is a rest stop. People come and go all the time. But it was completely deserted as I left and got back on the highway. I told my wife about it and my son the next time he called me. It was a strange experience, but I know that rest stop must be haunted. No doubt about it. Abandoned Factory by Vincent's VV. This story takes place in the summer of 2023. Me, a 17-year-old male, and my friend, female of 16, were hanging out at her house. We fell on a subject that is passionate for both of us, urbex. As we were talking about that, she told me there was an abandoned factory 30 minutes away from her house. 2 seconds is what it took for us to get our backpacks full of cigarettes, food, and water. We then started walking. We took some 5-minute breaks from time to time and continued on our path. When we arrived there, we were absolutely in love with the creepiness and the absence of life in this place. So let me introduce you to the 4 buildings. It'll help you understand the rest of the story. The first building, locked. No more information on it, probably somewhere to stock wood and metal. The second building is a big factory. It was the biggest building in the 4. There's 3 floors, a basement, a working space, and the eating place at the highest floor. The third building was a structure of wood to contain all the machines, etc. And finally, the 4th building, a small gas station where there were keys of other rooms. There were about 2 floors, but we didn't go to the second one for a reason that you will see further on in this story. Okay, so we went into the big factory, the second building. At first we were getting the shivers, but as time passed we got more and more comfortable with the place we were in. And I'm not going to lie, the alcohol helped with that. But then came the moment. We had to do it. We were so curious. We stood in front of a door and opened it, and there we were, in the basement. As we advanced into the room, we arrived at a small office. There was fresh coffee in a cup. We didn't think much of that at first. Maybe people like us came here. We didn't have the time to make any theories, because we heard something. A clown horn. We looked at each other and laughed nervously. We thought that one of us maybe stepped on a toy or something, but again, a clown horn yelled right behind us before we heard a cynical and traumatizing laugh. We ran to the door and left outside as fast as we could. We then just stood there outside scared. At this point, we didn't believe what was happening, so we laughed it off with another sip of our beers. But we went back. Yeah, stupid idea, I know. But don't worry, we didn't stay there even 5 minutes when we saw a hand opening the same basement door. And that was it for us. We ran all the way home. I've never run so fast in my entire life. But I think there is a small detail that will make you understand how bad it could have really been. About an hour later, we were going to a restaurant and we heard gunshots coming from the exact place where the factory was. That night, we didn't sleep at all, and to this day, I've never gone back to that city. Hey gang, thanks for listening to this episode of Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories. If you have a true scary story of any nature that you'd like to hear narrated on my channel or podcast, email it to unclejoshtruescarystories@gmail.com. I read them all. Special shout out to Jackson for resending his story. My apologies, brother. I don't know what happened to the first time that you sent it. Obviously, it got lost in translation somewhere along there, but I'm glad you resent it, and I hope you enjoyed the way I told your tale. If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Hit the notification bell for every time that I upload, and of course, find me on all of your favorite podcast outlets to save on data. Follow me on social media. Links to that are in the description below, and if you'd like to take your support a little step further, you can find my link to Patreon down there as well as a link to my TeePublic storefront. I know I've been promising new designs. I'll get right on that. I've got some cool ones. Thanks again for listening. And everyone, be excellent to each other. And until next time, be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.